This week, how I captured and edited one of my absolute favorite images of the year so far in Old Town Havana, Cuba. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson. Welcome to Approaching the Scene. Before we jump in and talk about that capture and edit of that image in Cuba, I want to take a quick question, kind of misconception about my name. The first name is Hudson. Tons of people email me, hit the comments with, Henry, really interesting what you had to say, or Henry, I have a question about. And it's something I've been used to since I was like 6 years old. I don't expect it to disappear overnight. I have a name that seems like it should probably be the reverse of what it is. But just if you're curious, the first name is actually Hudson. So I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna talk about this photograph, and afterwards I'm gonna come back with a question about how the new bridge assembly from Kirk on the Manfrotto 500AH fluid head eliminates the need for a panning clamp for advanced panoramas, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. That's going to be at the end. But I want to talk a little bit about what went into capturing that image, what my mindset was, and then how I went about editing it in Lightroom and on One Photo Raw. So, it actually happened because I was going out to dinner with my wife, my aunt, my two little ones in Old Town Havana, and I thought, I'll go light. I'll carry, well, sort of light. I'll carry one prime lens on my Nikon Z6, which is great in low light. And so I put my 105 millimeter 1.4, one of my favorite lenses of all time, on the FTZ adapter on the Z6, and I went rolling around town. And this scene just kind of unfolded in front of me, and that lens, kind of forced me into thinking about it in advance as it was approaching before it got too close to capture. And everything just worked like clockwork. And I'll tell you my thought process that went into it, and then we'll do an edit. I'm gonna jump into the studio and we'll pull up some images, and I'll sort of show the images leading to the frame that I like the best, why I selected that frame, what was going through my mind with settings and capture, and then we'll edit it. So before I do that, I just want to thank everyone who's been supporting the channel. Thanks so much for all the likes and for hitting subscribe. It makes a huge difference. And let's go check out what went into capturing that image. All right, so I'm here in the studio and I've got the raw files not edited at all. I've gone through and done a little bit of culling. There's a few deletes that are just, from the past when I was first going through this that were obvious deletes, but it's pretty lightly touched. And it's a whole series of images from this little walk through Old Havana with my 105 millimeter with the family, just, heading out to dinner. Right about the same time the sun's setting, there was just a thunderstorm that came through. So, we set off. I'll go into my loop view here in Lightroom. And I think I just basically ran in aperture priority mode at f1.4 so I could have that beautiful blur background that 105 1.4 gives me. That I was just sort of wanting to work with its out of focus beauty. So I got, my little boy Pike, my aunt, my wife, Pepper's in a little backpack. We've got a stroller with us. And we're just rolling out of the place that we were saying we were staying in a private residence in Old Havana on a Helping the Cuban People visa, which is the same thing we're going to do next year with the workshop. And, just kind of focusing on the family here, a little bit of the architecture. And then, my goal with the 105 millimeters is just kind of get a view of life on the street, those little intimate moments. I have a family walking up the street here. It's tough to shoot photos of your family because with 105 millimeters, it's just, you don't have a very wide field of view. But you see all these little cute little moments. Here's a pair of tourists, and this woman's just dancing in the street while her husband watches on with this Cuban guy, and she's getting into it. Or just the bicycle taxi cruising along. And at this point, I was really noticing these puddles in this old street, and we're sort of walking to the north with the sun setting in the west, lighting that sort of eastern side of the street through the cracks in the buildings and the different architecture, and these puddles were reflecting. And I started really honing in on the puddles. And as we're walking along, I'm seeing people reflected in them, and just kind of capturing those little street scenes. And then as we were coming up this street, I noticed this beautiful old car coming up the street toward me, and there's people in the way. I started kind of cutting around trying to get a clear view of it, and then I noticed that there's this really beautiful reflecting puddle And so I sort of scampered forward to get the puddle in the foreground, and then I got a little bit lower and actually got in the street. The car is moving slowly. I figured me being on the street might slow it down even a little bit more. And I really wanted to get it coming into the puddle, so I'm taking a series of frames here. I wasn't in burst mode, but I was hitting the shutter pretty frequently. And here you can see my aunt has actually moved up into the street. This is my Aunt Denise walking along. Stacy's behind her with the carriage, and she noticed what I was doing and sort of hung back. Luckily, I'm really glad there wasn't the baby carriage in the scene. And then I swung horizontal and got really low. You can see I'm up higher now. Now I got low to put that mud puddle right in the frame. I wanted to get its tire coming in. And I missed focus with the first shot, but then I caught it with the second one. And that's the one that I really like. There's the raw file. That's just the straight raw capture. 105 millimeters, 100 ISO. That's the base ISO of the Z6 f1.4, and it's at about 1250th of a second. I wanted that just isolation that shallow depth of field gets. And here we're relatively razor sharp, right where we want to be. The Chevrolet emblem and the license plate and the hood. Yeah, I love that 105 1.4 and what it can do. Now there's a water bottle here we'll get rid of as a distraction. That's basically the scene that I captured. There's a few more that I kind of liked en route away from there, but we're going to focus in on this one, and I'm going to jump into develop here in Lightroom, and we'll just do a quick raw process on this. I don't think we need this left panel open. I'm going to be here in the basic panels where I'm going to do the heft of my work. I might warm this scene up just a little bit right off the get-go. It was really warm light. I think it's rendered a little bit more neutral. I want to crop this image just a little bit, and often I crop at the very end of the process, but here it seems just a little bit off. And even if the street was crooked and the car was crooked, I want to make it so that it doesn't feel like the horizon's off. I'm really looking at the license plate on that grid as I go in here. I hit the R key. That's also that button right there, the crop overlay. And then anytime you're outside the crop frame, you get that little double arrow look. And if I just click and drag, I can adjust the angle. So I'm going to go just like that. And then I want to pull the upper part down. I don't like where the sky, that blown out bit of sky, widens up there. I don't need that. I'm going to come in. I don't want to put this line of the curb coming right to the corner. I'm going to leave just a little bit. But I don't want this car, this more modern car, in the frame either. I'm fine with the man admiring the car blurred in the background. I think that's kind of a nice touch. But that's about the crop that I'm after right there. I might pull the frame down just a smidge. That's pretty nice right there. Just a hint of reflection, but that reflection of the water and the people and that tire hitting that little wake, that looks perfect to me. So now what I want to do is set the white point and the black point. I'm going to click and activate the clipping masks, and you can see we've got some blown out highlights in this raw file, but I think I can probably recover most of that, or at least get it so it's not being rendered as pure white. And so the first thing I do is I pull the white slider back about halfway, and then I'll start moving the highlight slider. And there's going to be no detail in this spike of white, but at least it's not being rendered as pure white if I go to print it later. It's just a specular highlight. There's a little hint of the sky up there. And there's definitely some in the reflections of the sky on the vehicle. You can actually see detail in the buildings and that. I'm going to grab the shadow slider, pull it up just a little bit. I can pull it back, I can pull it up. I like it just, not much, just a little increased. The black slider, I can move that over till I start getting pure black in the frame. That blue clipping mask is going to show up because I have these two little triangles on the histogram view clicked. It's going to show me those clipping masks. And I don't mind having a little bit of black in the frame and the tire there. That's just going to be black ink if I go to print later. What I don't want is pure white, which if I go to print means no ink on the paper and you get a weird gloss differential. It doesn't look very good. And that's all I really want to do at this stage globally here in Lightroom. I might go ahead and grab the healing brush, the spot healing brush, which is kind of usually we use it for dust and scratches, but I'll bet, it's gotten so good. I could do this in On1, I could do this here, but I think it works just as well in either. I'm just going to go ahead and paint that bottle out. Let's see what it does. Oh, it grabbed that little speck of kind of messed up trash that's there in the cobbles. So I might shrink my brush down and get rid of that too. Whoop. And we'll turn it off and see if that looks natural. Nope, not very good. We'll do it in OM1. I'll bet it'll do a better job. Let's try that. I'll bet we'll use the perfect eraser in OM1 and have that work a little bit better. Okay, so feeling pretty good about this raw process. I'm going to just go ahead, right-click the image, and I'm going to go Edit in OM1 Effects 2019. And I'm going to create a copy of this raw file. Up till now, we've been working in perfectly raw. So this is showing you how to use OM1 software as a plugin from Lightroom for those of you that are Lightroom users to just finish edit your image. So this is going to create a Photoshop document in ProPhoto RGB color space, which is my preferred big wide gamut color space to edit master editing files. And it's going to create that file and then open it in OM1 Photo Raw 2019.6. So, and I'll show you why I like OM1. It's just the speed and simplicity that I can do finish editing. I'm going to go over and jump into OM1. That's on another desktop for me. And I'll go ahead and close this left panel. It's opened it not in OM1's Browse app, but in its editing app in its effects module as I asked it to. And before I go in and finish edit, I want to just grab my retouch tools here, and I'm going to choose the perfect eraser. There's also, a healing brush and a clone stamp. I'm going to resize that brush with the right bracket key. And I'm just gonna paint just that little bottle area out. I bet it does a really great job. It does really well with underlying textures. That's awesome. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, take out that other little piece of trash that was giving us a problem in Lightroom. Just kind of magic. Boom. All right, so no more trash in the foreground. And then I want to take a look at one of my presets. I create these effects presets in OM1, and I have a number of them. I have them kind of keyed by what season. Oh, I accidentally hit crop. I didn't mean to do that. Let's grab my view tool back. I have a set of presets I created this year that are kind of keyed to seasons, and I like to think of those. I like to think of those seasons as sort of color palettes. So you've got kind of warm brownish for summer. Fall is super, super warm, more oranges and golds. Spring is greens and bright colors. Winter's those kind of cool colors. So I'm going to go into my Northwest Fall presets, and I can hit this quick view browser. I just hit this little button right here, and I can make these previews of what the different presets will look like larger by just hitting the plus key on my keyboard. So you get a nice big view of what applying one of those might do, and I'm just going to scroll through looking at each one. And I got to say that gold reflections really stands out to me, which probably makes sense for this scene with kind of the gold light. It's just enhancing that a little bit. Yeah, that's perfect. So what that's done is it's added a bunch of effects filters in this stack here in Photo Raw. And I can go ahead and hide each one of those and turn each of them off. One of the neat things about using presets in Photo Raw is you can go in and look what the preset designer did, see the special sauce, what is each one doing. So the tone enhancer's opening up the shadows a little bit, adding some contrast. I like what it's doing. Sunshine filter is just adding a little bit more pop to the highlights and darkness to the shadows as if the sun was shining on the scene and warming it up a little bit. Dynamic contrast is adding kind of sharpness, edginess in the car. Now, one thing about dynamic contrast, I don't tend to like it in out of focus details. It tends to add an edginess to out of focus details. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to click it, open that up, and I'm clicking on its little mask icon. And what I can do is I've got my masking brush automatically if I click on that, and I want a 100% feather, so it's a nice soft brush with no hard edges. I'm going to make the opacity 100%. And I'm just going to run around freeform, and I'm just going to kind of paint. I'm painting out right now. I have it chosen to paint out, and I have a minus sign. I'm just going to paint that dynamic contrast out of the parts of the scene that are not in sharp focus, because I don't want those parts of the scene to have an edginess. I've paid a lot of money for that beautiful 105 millimeter 1.4 lenses bokeh, and I don't want to be creating sort of harsh edges and what should be beautiful blurred out of focus background details. So there you can see I kind of created a little little mask there, and now it's really only being applied to the in focus part of the scene around the car. Color enhancer, that's just going to add that warmth. And I could go in and I can tweak it after the fact. I could say, you know, I think the gold is a little more saturated than I want. I can pull that yellow back just a little bit at saturation. You can see I can play with each of the color channels. And then the vignette. The vignette, I tend to like a big softy vignette, and I like to adjust it after the fact. This is a big softy. You can choose that kind of style there if you want to right off the bat. By pulling the feather down, I can see what's happening with the vignette. It creates a hard edge. So I can say I want that vignette to be a little bit rounder, more the shape of the car. I want it to be sized a little bit smaller. I want to grab its centering tool and put it right over the front of the car. I might make it just a little bit smaller and just a little bit rounder. Where's the roundness? There we go. Even just a little bit more round as I play with it there. Center it, pull it up just a little right there. And then I'm going to take the feather back up to 100% and tone it back a little bit. I don't need it to be that dark on the edges, but now the car really stands out of the scene. And you know, we had it pretty nicely edited in Lightroom, but if I hit preview, you know, it's a major difference we just created. And the minute that I hit done, it's going to bake those changes into that Photoshop document, close the file, and it won't take it very long at all. This computer's a lot faster than my old Mac Pro. And it's going to open it back up in Lightroom and stack it. So now you can see, you know, it's stacked. This is 1 of 2, 2 of 2. If I open up the grid, it's on top of that other file. So there's my master raw file. There's the OM1 edited file. You know, we could have a look at that. We could put them side by side if we wanted to. Select them both and use the compare view. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference. So that's kind of my thought process that went into the capture of the image. You know, again, I think it's all about elements. It's about seeing that car coming in the distance, seeing that puddle that's reflecting, and thinking about where to get so that you're in the right spot as the car comes into that puddle. That was what was going through my mind. And I think I was kind of honed in even more by just having the one lens to work with. So that's my thought process in capturing the image and editing it. All right, real quick before I put the wraps on this week's episode and get the bag packed to take off for Olympic National Park to run a workshop with a bunch of really fun people this week, I want to address a question I got from a few people that saw me announce that Kirk new bridge, the bridge that Kirk Enterprise Solutions built for the Manfrotto 500 tripod head that a lot of us use and love. And a few people were curious about how it eliminates the need for a lower panning clamp if you're doing advanced panoramas. Well, the really cool thing about it, and maybe I didn't quite explain it well enough, is that where Kirk placed this clamp mount, there are several places that you can actually mount the clamp on this new bridge. Where he placed it, one of those clamp mounts, the forward one, actually places that clamp directly over, it centers directly over the axis of rotation of the 500 head itself. And so the thing about the 500 is that we level it from beneath. You loosen this, get it level. There's a bubble level to read what you're doing as you do that. Boom, it's level. Well, now if you put that clamp oriented in line with the head and you use a nodal rail and mount your camera to it, you can get your camera balanced using that nodal rail for weight distribution so that your camera won't flop while you're using it. You can just leave the thing loose and do your adjustments, you stay level. The other thing is, if you've got your nodal rail set up for the no parallax point and you know where the marks for the lens that you're using are, if you want to do an advanced panorama, it's as simple as sliding back from that point that's the no tipping point to the no parallax point, and now you can use the head itself as a level panning base that's exactly centered under that clamp. So no more need for a panning clamp underneath for advanced panoramas. So for someone like me that loves to do panoramas, the fact is you're set up for panoramas all the time. All you really need to do is flip your camera to vertical if it's horizontal and take a look at that gauge on the side, move it to where it's over the mark that you've made for finding the no parallax point. If that sounds unfamiliar, if you're interested in it, run to my website. I'll put a link down below for the no parallax point free download video. I have a video on how to do that. That's part of my advanced panorama training course. Anyhow, hope that answers the question. You have any more questions? You know, this whole thing is a conversation about all things photographic. That's what Approaching the Scene is about. So leave those comments in the comments section. Hit me up via email. I'm easy to find, and I'm excited to be heading off to Olympic National Park this weekend. It's going to be a beautiful workshop. The weather looks great. So we'll see you next week.